It is an honor to be here. I am IBM's most prolific inventor, and with 747 issued patents to date, I get a chance to work on a lot of really cool technology. So one of the things I want to talk about today is the future of the internet, what I'm working on. But to start talking about the future of the internet, I want to take you back about 10 years. It was spring of 2006. I sat in this expansive corner office on the visitor's side of a big wooden desk. And the chief information officer of a major retailer was on the other side. And he said, "Rick, I got a problem." He said, "Every year I'm spending about $15 million on computer servers because all my departments need it. You know, human resources needs one, and accounts payable needs one, and accounts receivable needs one. But at the end of the year, I look at it and I realize we only used about 20% of all those computer cycles. So that means for every $15 million I spent, $12 million was wasted. How can virtualization help me save some money?" And so we did this. We virtualized his computer servers in his data center, and eventually it led to the cloud. And for those of you who aren't IT geeks like me, virtualization means we're taking some real physical servers and we're kind of dividing them up so people actually start sharing resources. They just don't know that they're sharing it. It looks like they've got their own. So that's what the cloud is about, because the cloud is basically, instead of buying big computer servers, now you get what you need and pay by the hour or the day or the month. But let me ask you a question. What if we could virtualize other things around us in the physical world and not just computer servers? I think we can. But if I say this, the first thing you need to ask me is, well, Rick, tell me, what exactly do you mean by virtualize the stuff around us? Okay, so I'll tell you. Thanks for asking. What it means is we have to develop a contextual understanding of how things are being used. We have to understand the nuances of the usage of the objects around us. We have to be able to locate others who would be able and willing to use those objects. And then we have to have chargeback mechanisms that can charge people for using them. And so if we had this, then we can start putting to use unused vehicles. You've got a fleet of cars and trucks. Guess what? You can virtualize them. You can fractionalize the assets of your business. You could do the same to office space or warehouse space. There are so many different possibilities. So the next thing you should do is you should say, well, what kind of technologies could give us this power? And there's been so many technologies, big trends over the last decade or so. So you start thinking, well, there's cloud. Okay, I got that. There's mobile technologies. We're all carrying around supercomputers in our hip pockets now. Maybe that could help. There's social. It's not just Facebook and Instagram. It's about knowing what our friends and colleagues are doing and what their interests are. Maybe that could help. There's this whole move into cognitive systems, deep learning, and artificial intelligence. Maybe that could help. But if you're going to talk about virtualizing the physical world, there's one place you really have to begin, and that is with the Internet of Things. So there's been a lot of great quotes about this and a lot of talk about it. But at its most fundamental level, the Internet of Things, or IoT, as us engineers call it, IoT is about putting sensors on stuff and also giving it connectivity. Basically, letting stuff, the things around you, upload data to the cloud, download data, download software from the cloud, and allowing machines to talk to machines. And so it's a pretty powerful concept. But I would also tell you that if you really want to understand what's happening here, you got to go back in time. You got to go back more than 10 years. You got to go back to Johannes Gutenberg and the printing press. Because what happened with movable type was that Gutenberg fundamentally lowered the cost of disseminating information by an order of magnitude. And so books, which had been really just the luxuries, the purview of the wealthy, became commonplace items in the homes of many. And this changed everything. If you fast forward to our lifetimes, we saw something very similar happen with the internet, because when the internet came along in its first generations, this internet of people, suddenly information, the intangibles, could be almost infinitely indexed and searched and traded. And so we saw the marginal cost of disseminating information go down to virtually zero. But there was a problem with this, because as powerful as the internet was in creating highly efficient markets for stocks and bonds and tickets and music and books, really, when you ran into industries that had big dependencies on physical assets, stuff like agriculture and real estate and transportation, the internet had less power. So the good news, though, is the Internet of Things promises to change all this. So with the Internet of Things, we now have the possibility of basically this continuous presence in our life where the internet now goes down into objects and it seems like all our problems are solved, case closed, I can quit early. We figured out how to virtualize the world, right? Well, not exactly. Because usually, as tends to happen, when you talk about rolling out technology in a big, big picture way, there tends to be new problems that come along. So let's talk about the problem. And the problem is data. Data. How many of you have heard the expression big data? Probably everybody, right? Big data. Let me tell you, folks, we live in the era of small data. 10 years from now, you're going to look back and say, 2016, we talked about big data. What were we thinking? Because we haven't seen anything yet. For the first time in human history, we are replacing estimates and guesses and approximations with real figures. We no longer have to just take a wild guesstimate. Now we know exactly what is happening out there in the world around us. And by many estimates, roughly 80% of the data ever created has been created in the last 2 years, and this is incredibly difficult to wrap our heads around. And let me tell you one specific example. A modern oil and gas facility can have 80,000 sensors on it, 80,000 sensors, and this will create 15 petabytes of data in its lifetime. Now let me ask you a really simple head scratcher. How are we going to hire enough programmers to go out there and take care of all this data? Because you don't have just one data source. Now you've got data of all different kinds, coming from different kinds of sensors, all different places. And now we're faced with the prospect of writing deterministic programs to figure out what to do with all that. That is the big challenge right now. Fortunately, however, we have an opportunity. Because we ran through a bunch of technologies a minute ago, and I went through them fast. I tend to do that. It was cloud and social and mobile. And then, wait a minute, I talked about cognitive. So guess what's happening? In another corner of the universe, we're seeing the launch of real meaningful cognitive systems. And so we see this to a certain degree with things like Siri and Cortana, certainly more deeply with Watson, who many of you are probably familiar with. But to understand really what cognitive is, we need to go back in time, not all the way to the printing press, but back to around the year 1900. Because then for the first time, we developed what were called tabulating systems. And these were big machines that could be wired up, and they solved mathematical problems. And so before that, you'd have rooms full of mathematicians writing, solving a problem. And now you can do it with machines. By the 1940s, we have machines with enough memory in them that they could actually be programmed to solve diverse problems. And this is the world that we know, the world that we've grown up in. From mainframes and databases through computer games, all of these had been programmable. But just as we're running into this huge data explosion and saying, oh, we've got a big problem coming now, guess what? Finally, neural networks and deep learning techniques are becoming so powerful and so practical that we can begin training our computers like we would train a dog. And so rather than give it deterministic programming instructions, now we can begin to train computers to learn the norms, to predict and prescribe and take action based upon what they've learned. And that's a powerful thought. So right now, it may feel you're in this perfect storm of technology, but the truth is you're not. You are caught between two perfect storms of technology, and these storms are coming together. It is inevitable. And the challenge we have as technologists particularly is how do we leverage these storms? How do we use these for business advantage, but more importantly, for societal gain? And this is the kind of thing I'm working on, because I believe, fundamentally, that in the future, we're going to have devices all around us that understand us, that understand the context of what we're doing. They're going to talk about us, whisper about us, gossip about us. They're going to make deals on our behalf, and they're going to remove the friction from our daily lives. This is where we're going. Some specific examples of what I'm working on today. I'm working on basically image analysis from drones. So imagine you have drones that are used in the morning in an amusement park before it opens to do inspection of infrastructure, to look at the roller coaster to make sure every morning that no bolts have fallen out, that nothing is showing signs of rust. That drone can sit back down. All this is done through image analysis. That drone lands again, it's charged, and that afternoon it goes out to a field of crops and performs the same kind of high-resolution analysis and understands where it needs pesticides, where it needs fertilizer, where it needs irrigation. These kind of uses are going to become increasingly automated. I'm working with automotive manufacturers who want to understand their drivers better. Not just to tune the car to NPR when you sit down, not just to set the air conditioner all the way up when you sit down, but also to know that you like to stop at the coffee shop between 7 and 7:30 every morning on your way to work. And so when you take the car to Washington, D.C., guess what? It gives you recommendations for the coffee shops that you can stop at. We are developing and training new capabilities in our objects. These objects will no longer be simple and dumb. They'll become intelligent, they'll know us, and they'll work on our behalf, even as we virtualize the world. It's going to be an incredible ride, an incredible journey. I'm happy to play a part in this, and I'm thankful for the sponsors who've made today possible. And I look forward to continuing this journey and talking with many of you in the reception shortly. Thank you.